Mmm. Good sipping. Hey, fellas. Long time no see. It's been a while since I built a model. I would say probably 5 or 6 months. So I'm going to get back in the action and start building and putting some videos out. And since it's been a while, I think I might have forgotten how to build a model. But you get to come along with me as I try to remember how to do it. So what I've done is I bought a few Tamiya kits just to get back in the action because they're easier to build than a lot of the other kits, and I didn't feel like doing a bunch of filling and sanding. So I'm going to start off with this F-16 Aggressor, which is kind of cool. I'm pretty sure I built this one before, but I can't remember when. But it does look familiar when I started getting into it. Now this series is going to be a little bit longer. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth and show you a little more of the process of how I build models. And I'm sure I'm going to screw stuff up along the way, and you get to come with me to enjoy it. So let's get on with the video. All right, so it's been a while since I've built this kit. I don't know if I've actually built this specific kit, but I think I've built a Tamiya F-16 before. And if I remember correctly, there were a couple areas that were a little problematic, or that could be problematic. And one of the main ones is right up here. Now this is going to be right in your face when you're looking at the model, is where the forward part of the fuselage meets the back part here on the top. And if I remember correctly, this didn't fit exactly right. I think I might have had some issues there. So I really want to concentrate on this. And I'm going to, one of the first things I'm going to do is glue this down and get this all lined up right along here as best as possible. I went ahead and cut out the bottom part, so when I do glue this on, and I can dry fit it and make sure everything lines up correctly, and we'll tackle that here in a minute. The nose is another thing I remember being a little bit of an issue for me. So what I'll do when I glue this is I'm not going to really squeeze this together because I don't want to misshapen this nose. I'm just going to glue it and hold it somewhat firm, but I don't want to squish out a lot of plastic because I don't want the part to be misshapen, because that is another issue I believe that I had fitting on here and it not fitting exactly correctly. So as you can see, I've went ahead and I've cut these off the sprues. This is going to be the focus of the next probably day or so, trying to get these all lined out. I went ahead and the sprue gates I've left a little proud, so I'm going to come in here with my nippers and a fresh X-Acto blade, and I'm just going to carefully clean these parts up as the best that I can without removing too much plastic. And then I've got my trusty nail file here, and I'm just going to make sure that I get these sprue gates taken care of without creating more problems for myself. A lot of times when I get in a rush, I'll hurry up and I'll clip the sprue gates too close, and I'll cause myself an issue that I need to fill in and just kind of make a mess of things. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these sprue gates, especially right along here. It's going to be important that I get these two sprue gates here nice and cleaned up, so I can get this aligned really well. So I'm going to take care of these. We'll come back and we'll and see about getting these parts all aligned and looking as perfect as possible. All right, fellas. So I've got these glued up. I've got all the sprue gates cleaned up, and I've got them all glued up. I've got the nose glued up, and there's a line. I mean, there are seams I'm going to just have to take care of, and especially along the bottom of the intake. This section right here, I'm going to need to clean up, which kind of stinks. I'm going to need to clean this up right along here. So I've left the sprue gates on there. They are what they are. I'm going to have to fill that in and sand it, and I'm also going to have to probably replace some of that detail, like right there and right here. That is just what it is. Now, when I sand it away, just depending, I've got little templates I can use to rescribe some of that detail back. It's probably not going to look perfect, but it's on the bottom, so it's not the biggest deal in the world. I went ahead and cleaned the sprue gates off the bottom, and it looks like this is going to fit. This upper part of the fuselage is going to fit pretty well. I just have to hold it down. So when I get it down just like that, it actually looks pretty good. And then once I get painted, you won't notice. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using Tamiya extra thin, I'm going to use this Plastruct plastic weld. It's a little bit thicker and it dries, it sets really quick. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit in here, because I don't want to like put too much cement in here and have it squeeze out the top, because then that's going to ruin a lot of my detail. So we're going to just try to put some of this Plastruct in here. And I'm just going to try to squeeze this down just like so and hold this here. And hopefully that will dry pretty quick, set pretty quick. And it will give me that nice clean joint along the top. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to use my nose to stop the camera, because I'm going to hold this for a little bit. And then hopefully this will set up. Now I will run some Tamiya extra thin right along that join, just a little bit, not much, because I don't want to soften that joint up too much. But I will run some Tamiya extra thin right along that top part where those two meet up, just to bond that plastic a little better right along there. All right, fellas, it's the next day. And this is all glued up. It looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. Almost perfect. Almost perfect. Pretty close. Good enough. Fits up to the bottom part of the fuselage pretty well. And I've got the nose all glued up. It went together pretty well. Now, obviously, I'll have to do some sanding, but it glued up just pretty much the way I had hoped. Not too much glue spillage, so hopefully I didn't deform the shape of the nose too much. The intakes do have the seam running along the inside, which I will just drip some Mr. Surfacer along that seam, spray it white, and then I'm going to call that a day, because you're not going to see much of it anyway. It's going to be on the bottom of the plane, and really once that's all painted and I'm not going to devote time trying to sand that seam out of there with filler and nonsense. So anyway, one of my inspirations for doing this was I've got the Encyclopedia of Aircraft Modeling Techniques from Diego Chiano. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Not sure. But I've got this encyclopedia set, and in it, it comes with a booklet on this exact plane from Tamiya. And it's basically like a tutorial book with all of the tips and tricks found in the actual encyclopedia, all put into one book and put in and shown on this specific plane, which I think is really cool. He does use in this some aftermarket stuff, which I'm not doing. He does make some corrections to the actual kit to make it more accurate. That's not something that I'm a big fan of doing typically, unless it's something really major. So, you know, that's just me. You do you. And Kiyono, Diego, you do you. So, but anyway, it looks like he had an issue with this. I'll have to read through this. It's been a while since I looked at this. Okay. Looks like he might have had issues with with this seam right here. But I didn't, because I took my time with it and did it really good. Okay. All right, so he also uses an aftermarket exhaust nozzle as well, and I am not doing that. But anyway, I went ahead and I went ahead and started working on some of the cockpit stuff. I've got that all together. I mean, it's nothing like major. It's nothing super special. The seat, I mean, it looks okay, but it's nothing special. I'm not sure if I'm going to have the canopy closed or opened. I think either way, I'm going to have, at least while I paint it, I may leave the canopy open, because I believe the last time that I built a model, I had issues with paint getting inside on the canopy. Okay, so let's get this book out of here. this canopy has a seam line running down the middle, and it's really prominent. So we're gonna have to get rid of that. So let me, yikes, that's like really bad. Look at that nonsense. All right, so let's get that sanded off next, so I can get that off my mind. Get that taken care of, and then, I don't know, figure out what else we're gonna do. All right, so now I'm gonna tackle the seam in the canopy. I think I'm gonna use the dark canopy, but I'm gonna go ahead and clean up both of them while I'm here, just in case I change my mind or something happens to the other one. I can also use one to mask off the cockpit if I need to, and not have to like mask it up, and then just replace it with the one that I have painted. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, so we're just going to clean both of them up while I got all the stuff out. So I've already started on the non-tinted canopy, and I started with getting the sprue gates cleaned off, and that was you just have to be very careful because the clear plastic is a lot more brittle than the regular styrene. So I went ahead and I used a sharp X-Acto blade and some sanding sticks, and then cleaned up the sprue gates, and I think I got them pretty well. Now, to start off, what I like to do, and I've shown this before, if you've ever watched my, that big Harrier that I built from, what was it, I forgot which brand it was, but I built a big Harrier and it had a really bad seam line. So, what I like to do is I'll start off with an X-Acto blade, and this is really a prominent seam line. So I'll start off with my X-Acto blade, and I'm just going to take this and I'm going to scrape off that prominent seam line with this, just like so. And I'll probably do some jump cuts because this does take a little bit of time. It's not hard. It's more of a pain in the butt than it is difficult to do. You just want to take off as little material as possible. You don't want a flat spot up here. And I just keep checking with my finger to make sure that I've got that seam line down. But I don't want a divot in this clear plastic. So I'm just trying to take that raised area off. And visually, you can see it fairly well, but it really does help to check with your fingers to feel it. Okay, now that I've got that down, I'll take a somewhat coarse, it's not really coarse, but it does remove a little bit of material, but a fairly coarse sanding stick. And I'm just going to go over this. Again, I want to try to avoid getting flat spots in this, so I'll kind of go back in a back and forth motion. And this is a very pliable sanding stick. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got any deformations from that seam taken care of, and I can check with the light to see. I can still see there's a little bit of a deformation where that's standing just a little proud. So I want to get that taken care of. And I want to try to avoid, there's a panel line here, and it's really not very prominent. There's a panel line here that I'm going to have to use to mask off with Tamiya tape, but it is not very prominent. So I want to try to avoid sanding over that area and ruining that panel line. Once I paint it, when I mask this off, once I paint it, that's going to come back and the paint's going to raise that level to make it look like it's kind of a raised frame for the canopy. But my issue is is trying to lay down the tape to mask the clear part. I want to have something in there that I can use as a guide for my to lay down the tape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down to a finer sanding stick, I'm going to use a little bit of spit. I know it's gross. Bear with me, it helps. A little bit of spit, and I'm going to start removing the scratches that I've made thus far with the finer and finer sanding grits. And the more work you put in with the sanding sticks and the finer sanding sticks, so I've got a super fine sanding stick here, and then I've got my other sanding sticks that are really super fine. So I'll keep on moving on to these, and trying to get as many of those scratches out before I move on to my rubbing compound. This is just like stuff I got at the AutoZone or Walmart, and then the polishing compound, and then finally the Plastex. And what I use to buff these compounds out is I'll use this Dremel tool with one of these like buffing wheels. And I know you've seen it before, but I'm going to go ahead and get on with trying to sand these scratches out the best that I can with these sanding sticks, and then we'll move on to the compounds. All right, so I've sanded out most of the scratches that I can see. So now I'm just going to take my Dremel tool, and this is just a cheap one I got at Walmart, put it on low. I'm going to get some of this rubbing compound on here. Now this does get a little messy, and I'll probably spray my camera. I'm going to turn it on low. You don't want to stay on one spot very long because you don't want it to burn through, which is also why I stay on the low setting. But I'm just going to start buffing this. Now you have to be careful, because if you hold this the wrong way, if it catches the corner, it's going to flip your piece out of your hand and throw it across the room, or it's going to break it. So you kind of have to be careful. And I'm just going to use this to buff it out. And then once I'm satisfied with this, I'll move on to the polishing compound, which is a little less coarse. And then I'll finish it up with that Magwires Plastic X, which I also got at Walmart, I believe. It's for like headlight covers for your car. It's really fine, and it really does a good job of just polishing it out and giving these clear parts a nice shine. But even with this rubbing compound, it's starting to look pretty good. Now, a lot of times when I'll do this, I'll think I'm done, and then I'll hold it up to the light and I'll still see some scratches, in which case I'll go back and I'll repeat the sanding process again, trying to get those scratches out with the sanding sticks, and then I'll go back and do the rubbing compound and the polishing compound again. Okay, so I've got these all done, and I think I'm pretty happy with it. It looks pretty good. The seam is all gone. I don't see any scratches. You can kind of see a little deformation where the seam was, but I think it looks pretty good. So there we go. I got both of them done. I think I'm probably going to go with this one right here. The fit on it is really well. And so there we go. So now let's move on to doing the taking care of those seam lines inside here. So let me show you that. All right, so for these, what I'm going to use is some of this Mr. Surfacer 1000 and a pipette. So what I'll do, and again, this doesn't really have to be perfect. Again, you're not going to see a whole lot inside of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my pipette and I'll start here. Get enough in here. And I'm just going to run this along. And I'm going to let this flow out the bottom and just run along that seam. And I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but it is dripping out. Get my fat fingers out of the way. But I will let it run out and drip out the bottom, just like so. And that will fill that seam in Just like that. Am I lighting? I just can't get that. But maybe I can take a picture of it to let you see what that looks like. There we go. We kind of get a better idea. So what I'll do is I'll set this on its side. So this Mr. Surfacer can just kind of settle in that crevice or in that seam. You might get a better view on this one. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to get the bubbles out and let it drip out just like that. And then I will set it to where that, get my putty. So once this dries, I will go and I will do the other side just the same way. And that's gonna, and you can repeat the process and do this a couple different times and get it nice and smooth. I don't know how much I'm gonna do it. I'll probably just do it just maybe once or twice. And then spray the inside with white Tamiya paints, really thin with really low pressure, and put a nice thick coat on it, and then I should be good to go. So that's how I tackle the seams on something like this. Now if I was, if it was something bigger and something you could see more of, I would come in there with the sanding stick, smooth it out, and then repeat this process. But I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. So I think that's probably all for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll come back with part 2 here shortly. Thank you very much.